Well, we're burning through that wood pretty quick. Last time I had the video camera out here, this was all full of hay. Well, there's the edge of the pipeline right there. You can see the pipeline go up and over. And we're going to go right up through there. And that's kind of wet, but I got a lot of drop to work with to drain it out. And the culvert goes right from the edge of the pipeline over to here. And the property line, in fact, is by this fence line right here. Not this first one in, but this one. So I can put a culvert out to here. And the drive will go right in through this section right here. I got to cut all those trees out of there. So I think we're in good shape. Okay, so I just went and stuck these cases together. This is kind of an addendum to that video. Now there's a couple of things that I don't know if you picked up on, but in order to assemble this and squeeze the cases together with this, I went and pulled the flywheel side first, and I used my tooling. And the bushing sets right inside there, so basically it squeezes the case between the bearing and the bushing versus pulling on some other section of the case, you know. When you run this tool, you can tell it's a very solid hook up to the crank, and when it finally hits the end, it hits solid. There's no flex, right? Very, very robust because it's pretty much linear between the case and the bearings and the tool. A couple of little details is one, once you get the case in place, you got to make sure things like the pickup tube for the bar oiler isn't in between the case. Then you thread this fitting onto the crank. It's a reverse thread. They got a bunch of them for different cranks. It's a reverse thread, so you get that on there all the way to the bottom. Of course, making sure that the crank and the bearings and the seals and all that are really lubed up with, I put a little grease and oil. Just what I do. And once that fitting is on there, there's two threads on this jack screw. There's a thread that's a standard thread which brings it in and out of the tool, but then on the end there's a reverse thread which is designed to fit into this. So the next thing you do is reverse thread. See how I'm backing that out but it's pulling it in? Bringing that tool down to the cases by just basically using the reverse thread to pull it out. And then once you get to that point, that's when you put the bar nuts on and you can start pulling. Okay? Now, because it's attached here and it's not linear to the bearings, you're not getting a square pull. So, yeah, I guess theoretically you could probably take the pins, the locating pins, and drive them at some later point in time. I don't think that's practical. So what will happen is you'll get close, right? And you're going to line it up and make sure everything lines up properly. And then you're going to have to use the case screws to bring it to the completion. Okay? Because it won't be solid. There is flex. The system itself is going to be a little flexible. And then to take it off, you got to take the bar nuts off, then basically thread this out. Off the crankshaft. Right? And then after that, you got to get down in there and take the case screws, and you're going to have to wind them pretty tight. And it'll pull the cases together. I mean, that's what they do. And because I put the gasket in there, of course you put a gasket in there, why would you not? They settle a little bit, the gasket squeezes a little bit, so you got to go back and hit it again. Now, because it wasn't in a linear pull, there's a little bit of flex in the entire system, and you can pretty much expect the crank to be, well, like that, kind of jammed up. So you're going to have to take something and tap that crank in order to get it centered. So I just use one of my tools. Just one of the other things you get with that tool. And just center it. And once it's centered, you can do it by eye, it's close enough. But when you do that, make sure you take the tool and bottom it out on the crank so it's a pretty solid hit. With my tool, I've got that 50 thousandths recess, sort of goes around the bearing, so if it actually tries to pull the bearing, it can't pull it too far out, it actually settles it to where it's supposed to be. But also, since it's really setting on the race of the bearing, it's pulling on the race as well as the case, it's basically the same point. It's linear, and it'll pull those cases right together, and you can snug it up real tight. You don't have as much flex in the system, so you don't have to go back and do the final pull with the case screws as much. You might get a little bit over here, but usually what I found is it just snugs up tight. And that's because it's linear relative to the crank, you know. It's just everything is it's a little bit easier to deal with. You know, then make sure your locating pins are where they're supposed to be, you know, because sometimes it'll drive them in or out. And if you notice, now that I've done that, the crank is, you know, there's a little seal tension, but it's nice and free, ready to go. So this set of cases is actually ready to build. So we're done, demonstration done. But I think that's a graphic demonstration of the different styles of tooling. You know, whether you spend money and get something like this, there's a variety of people who do them, myself included. Or spend $60 and get this. Now here's the thing. If you're just doing a couple of saws, this set of tools from Holzfforma or the Stihl set, pulling and pushing, you get 2-in-1 kind of thing. You get the adapters for the different cranks to pull the different cranks through. You also get the ability to push that crank back through the cases should you need to split the cases for case repair of some kind. So there's actually, maybe it's not quite as efficient, and yeah, you have to do some monkeying around a little bit, but it's sure a lot easier than a press, and it's fairly inexpensive. And this kind of one tool does multiple tasks, allows a person who's only going to do a few saws to save a lot of money and not have to spend hundreds of dollars in tooling. So I still think this is a good deal. You know, yeah, it's not lined up properly. I noticed the thread alignment was off, and there's a bunch of stuff like that, which I guess theoretically can compromise a little bit its rigidity and its ability to pull cleanly, but it obviously does a good enough job because I have this set of cases together and they snugged up nice and tight. Locating pins are nice and aligned and everything the way it's supposed to be. So basically proving the point that that particular tool allows you to put these things together, right? And that's what you'd buy it for. You might do one saw, you might do 2 saws. Save you several $100s. So what I've got here is I've got my tools threaded onto the crank, and I'm going to start with whatever fits in one side. This happens, I've already tapped it a couple times. That's a 30 thousandths feeler gauge. It fits in snug here, but doesn't fit in over here. So let's go to 28. And one guy asked me, he goes, well, what do you set it to? You know, every saw is an individual. And the answer is you try to set it to the same on both sides. Almost. So to 25 thousandths. 25 fits. 25 fits on both sides. And 26 fit on this side but didn't fit on that. So that's 25 thousandths goes to both sides. 26 goes on one side but not, well, it's a slip fit in there, so we got 26. Well, almost. So somewhere between 26 and 28 thousandths doesn't go on the side, so maybe like a little tap like that. There it goes. Still both sides. That's close enough. You're within a thousandths of size. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I make my crank jacks where they're robust enough that you can tap them with a brass hammer. And my early ones, I actually took too much material away, even though it's standing up to the abuse. But my later ones, now that I'm using a different kind of handle, I'm using a little thinner material in the handles, gives me more room. So what I've done is I've made these flat, so you can tap on them. It's not going to bother them. You know, take a brass hammer and use that to center your crank. So basically you get not just the puller, but you're getting a crank centering concept with these. I'm not sure you can do that with these, but crank tappers where you tap the crank are cheap. It's not a big issue. Just a detail. You know, maybe what I should do is start making some fittings to adapt this. to more situations. You're still going to have to come up with a way to pull that flywheel side through. I wonder if one of my Husqvarna tools, because they're cheap. You gotta understand, those Husky case splitting tools are only like 40 bucks. You know, for both sides. If there's one that would work. Oh, look at that. There you go. There's your answer right here. And this one here is fitting tool 5025030-08. Let me see if the Husky bushing will work. Yeah, why the heck not? Why not? So here's your answer. Boy, they're going to hate me. Well, let's see if this actually works. Let me see if it'll thread on there. Look at that. So I believe you could use the Husqvarna tool for a 288, 281. I think that's what this is. I don't want you to go look for that. Look for the part number 5025030-08. That has the 10mm by 1 thread for the flywheel. So here's some options. Again, this is for the Stihl 660s. I believe that I can pull the flywheel side together with this Husqvarna fitting tool with the part number 5025030-08 and pull the cases together with this fitting tool from Holzfforma for like $60. And again, you get both a tool that can pull the crank through the seal and the bearing or push it out. So this gives you the option of being able to split cases. So for that $100 that this is going to cost, you also have the capability of doing multiple saws plus push those cases apart again. As an option, my tool set here is I have the handle, the bushings, and 2 jack screws threaded, you know, the bar stock drilled in tap for the different threads. You know, it gives you one saw. It gives you 2 different threads, which is one saw. One for the clutch side or PTO side, one for the flywheel side, plus a bushing. Usually I give 2 bushings. That's going to cost you $100 plus shipping, right? And you've got enough to pull the crank through the cases for one saw, but this does not give you the ability of pushing them back apart. See what I'm saying? Where this, same money, you can use this tool right here. They're cheap. I mean, these things are really cheap. And you can use these a lot. They're very hard. They last a long time. Plus this tool, for the same money as say my set, you get the ability, yeah, you got to monkey around with the K-screws and stuff like that, but you can still put your saw together. But not only just one saw like you would with my kit, you're also getting all these. And I'm sure you can buy a couple of these and cover even more Stihls. So you get a lot more coverage. Yeah, theoretically mine's more rigid and does this and that and the other thing. And if you're doing a lot of them, mine might make some sense, or there's other guys out there doing the same kind of thing. But if you're just doing a couple of saws, that approach could save you money, but also give you some flexibility to do major repair if your pet build blows up. How's that for a concept? Is that worth a video? This thing right here ain't worth a damn. It's junk. This right here, I like it. And I'm hoping I articulated why that thing is special. And I think that's going to be a wrap. That's going to be a video. Well, I got another one here that won't idle and won't start. Yeah, you listen to my dogs bark a little bit, but that's fine. And chances are this is going to follow a familiar theme. And I'm going to check a couple things quick, but my hunch is we're going to be right into it just like we were the other one. But I can tell you right now, I got to go all the way down to the cases on this one. So might as well just start busting it apart. There's really no sense in doing any kind of analysis when you see that amount of movement in the crank. Let's check this out. Somebody understands the value of putting the hot wire to the top side versus the bottom side. So we got that. Well, here's another one with a set of cases I can't do anything with. See how much movement there is in that bearing? I can't do anything with the cases. We're done. But I think that's a good lead into the video, right? Well, I couldn't leave it alone. I had to go one step further. And that's using the Husqvarna puller to pull the crankshaft for a Stihl 660 into the flywheel side. And this one that I had mentioned before, that has the right thread. It's got the 10mm by 1 thread. The only problem I'm seeing is travel distances. This bushing here is just a little bit too long, so we're not getting good thread engagement. So if I put that bushing right there with the washer, I only have I don't know, maybe about 3/8 of thread engagement and only about 2/3 of that nut engaged. So there's a chance that that'll strip, right? But so the other option is, instead of using the bits and pieces, from the Husqvarna puller is to come up with a series of bushings that are shorter than that. These little top hats, you can get them at Tractor Supply. And then of course this is just one of those washers that I use. So, I mean, if you get that washer right there, top hat right there, now you got the thread engagement you need to make that happen. You know what I'm saying? So I think what I want to do, look at that. See, I've got all kinds of thread engagement there. So I'm pretty sure this concept was going to work. And the key, I think, is to keep things centered. So I know this is not perfect, but again, this is the Farmer Jones channel, and I'm trying to see whether or not that concept that I had articulated in fact can happen, where you can buy the Husqvarna tool with the right thread for that flywheel side crankshaft for 40 bucks, and then use it plus the Farmer Tech tool to actually assemble the cases. That's 19 millimeter. Okay, I've got 19 millimeter 15/16. Pulling it right in. Not a problem. Didn't do any damage to the cases. The crankshaft is nice and through. Those are 3/4 washers. This is a 3/4 inch inside diameter top hat brass bushing. These are pricey little buggers. And this was the crank fitting tool. And I don't know what Husqvarna is for. I think it's for a 288 or 281. But like I said earlier in the video, I put the part number in for it. And concept works, guys. Some of the smaller Stihls have the 8 millimeter by 1 thread on the flywheel side. And any Husqvarna, like 372 or any of the smaller ones, those crank fitting tools would work. I think that probably would have worked. It's just I didn't like the amount of thread engagement it did not have. So we used this strategy, which worked just fine. So those two tools from Holzfforma really do the bulk of what you have to do to take cases apart and put them back together again, at least the Stihls, with the non-stuffer cranks, and a couple of the Husqvarna case fitting tools. And you can save a bunch of money. To get to where I just got to, with my tool set would have cost you $100 plus shipping, and I still wouldn't have all the different sizes that come with this. So this is a net gain. Plus this tool allows you to pull the cases apart. So that's another gain that you wouldn't get just with a standard tool set from me. Add this, you know, that's capability obviously. A couple of washers and bushings plus this Husqvarna tool, and you got yourself all you need. Those cases are so clean, and there's no corrosion. What a nice job they have done on these things. I better just put them together just so that the surfaces are protected, you know. Don't know what I'm going to do with it. I don't have any plans to use these darn things. I was going to use these for spare parts. The idea being if someone comes back with a crusher saw, I've got some parts to support it with. That's why I got into this goofy stuff anyway, is to have that scenario covered. So I just back it off and then turn the crank that way, because remember it's a reverse thread and it's bottomed right out on the crank, so I can effectively turn the crank as well. I just take a couple of turns and back it out a little bit and then turn the crank to help it get through that seal. Now this is actually worst case, by the way, because it's cold as hell in here. The other thing is, I don't know if you noticed, but look how square everything is on the cases as they're going together. You know. I'll turn it this way so you can get a better look at it. That's one of the benefits you get from this style of puller work. You know, you really now it's getting into the seal. If it prolapses, I'll just pull the damn seal out and put another one in. You see how that seal is? It's nice and settled in there properly. There's no prolapse whatsoever. And the question here isn't whether or not mine work better. You know, I've kind of over-engineered these goofy things. That's not the question. The question is, do the ones work good enough? And I'm telling you the answer is yes. Is that going to make me change how I do my saws? No, I'm going to keep doing what I do because this works really well. But does that mean that you folks out there got to spend all the money to buy these pullers for me? I'm telling you, you really don't, because half that money you can get one of those Holzfforma pullers and accomplish the same kind of thing. Plus have the case splitting ability added to that, you know what I'm saying? So, if you're trying to save some money, let me see if I've got some case screws.